as the as soon as the sun declares itself, everything else become visible. Everything else is given a name and a form. The whole world, the whole reality becomes evident as soon as the sun appears. Now, sun is an example for the Atman, but Atma is not a physical entity. Atma Tattva is pure consciousness. We always give examples of the sun, we give examples of the sky, because these have some similarities. The Atma is all pervading, like the cosmos. Therefore, we say the cosmic space. Atma is like cosmic space. Atma is also is kind of Swayam Jyoti. It declares itself. Nobody declares it. Like you cannot see the sun with a torchlight. Because of the consciousness, everything else become sensible to us. Everything else makes sense to us. Without that consciousness, without that Atma Tattva, tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam. Everything else. Tasya bhada sasya bhasa sarvam idam vibhati. In the light of the consciousness, in the light of that consciousness, it's not physical light. It's the light of consciousness in which everything else makes sense to us. That is what we were discussing. Now, उक्तार्थे येन idam sarvam vijanati tam kenam vijaniyad vigyataram are kena vijaniyaditi. There is this dialogue in Vrihadaranyaka Upanishad. So there is a dialogue between the Acharya and the student. And the Acharya, because somebody might ask you this question, these are some pretty childish questions we have all discussed in the school days. Who is the creator of creator? If there's a God, who created that God? A lot of these questions come from people who are atheists, not a problem. But when we are talking about that Atma Tattva, that supreme consciousness, posing this question itself is self-contradictory. That is what we are going to see in course of our discussion today. Yenidam janate sarvam tatkenanina janatam vigyataram kena vidyat uktam vedetu sadhanam. Yena idam janate sarvam. Let's imagine in your families. So now these days you have both father and mother who are braid owners. But in many traditional families, you will have the father who is the sole bread owner, and then earlier there were relatively larger families. Now there are just one or two children. Now, when it comes to provisions at home, it's the mother who provides, isn't it? So if mother falls ill, everything becomes topsy turvy at home. If father falls ill, the income stream goes haywire and everybody is in problem. Why am I mentioning this? We are talking about consciousness and the Atma Tattva, and he's trying to mention it here. He's quoting from another Upanishad, the Brihadaranyaka, in this particular couplet to explain to us what is the speciality about this Atma Tattva and why you cannot be discussing Atma Tattva as if it's a physical light or it's an external object and somebody has to prove its existence. Somebody should be able to see it. Then only can you arguable say that yes, there is an Atma. Otherwise, I don't agree. Where is Atma? Show it to me. That is what a scientific mind, a scientific student of science or rationalist will tell you. The atheist will have these arguments. The teacher is posing this question. Idam sarvam yena janate. By virtue of that light, by virtue of that consciousness, by help of which you know everything, tat kena annena janatam. How do you know that? With the help of what? Higher consciousness. There is something called anavastha dosha prasanga. So there is a jnata, and then you are knowing something. We are right now discussing Panchadashi. And there is this consciousness by virtue of which we are being able to discuss a subject matter. We have a computer in front of you, and I have a computer in front of me, and we are connecting through the internet. We are having this online satsang. Yeah. Now, if we have a doubt, how do you know the jnata, the knower? How do you know the knower? The knower is not an object of knowledge. Other than the knower, you are trying to relate to all the external objects with the help of, and even your thoughts. These are all jnana vastu, object of knowledge. Sometimes we think about our mind, sometimes we think about our emotions, sometimes we think and we know about our physical facts about our life, isn't it? But how do you know the knower? That is Swatasiddha, that is self evident. You are not tracing through some argument, through some evidence, the knower, because he's the subject, he's the knowing subject. Then there are different objects that it is talking about, is reflecting on. Yena idam janate sarvam tat kena nyena janatam. Anyena kena. Who else is there other than that? So if we allow that sort of a discussion to come into question, then there would be the possibility for us to even think about, okay, there is called Supreme Brahman, Supreme Consciousness, out of which all of us have manifested, or in that grand platform called unending consciousness, all the stories of our lives is appearing and disappearing. But how do we know that Brahmin? Is that any superior consciousness with the help of which we can know, recognize this consciousness? That is a superfluous question. It is showing Jyotihi, it is self evident. There is no other superior consciousness to make the presence of this consciousness called Brahman evident. There is no superior logic available. Why so? Vijnata taram kena vidyat. The Vijnata, the knower, what extra logic, what pramanantara, what other pramana, other evidence, other methodology you're going to employ to know the subject. Remember, you're you're going to change some methodology, right? That you can do. So I'm doing, say, prataksha, direct perception. Then I will have anumana, inferential knowledge. I'll have some logical conclusions. I'll employ logic to establish. But you cannot prove with all that your own existence. You cannot do it. And we'll slowly proceed and it will become more and more evident to us. Through any jnana, you cannot prove the vijnata, which is you. Kena vidyat, saktam vedyetu sadhanam. Who else is capable of doing? Yeah. Because where is a vedya vastu? We have already discussed it earlier. The Atma may not be vedya vishayatvena. As an object of knowledge, Atma is not available. Because everything that we see around us is within that grand field, that sphere of consciousness called the self, called Atma. Then it's not Vedya. Because Vedya, why? Because it's not different from the self. It's not different from the Vijnata. It's not different from the guy who knows. And therefore, it's not an object of your perception or your knowledge, your argumentation. No, it's not different from you. It's yourself. If we are talking about any Vedya Vastu, which is external to the consciousness, it is external to the knowing self, then we can talk about some means of knowledge, some tools and techniques through which we'll establish whether this is a cat or it's a dog. In the darkness, there's something moving. You have a sensor with your hands and you put it, yeah, something is moving. Now you're trying to use an infrared camera to see the silhouette or the outline of that animal and say, no, no, it's a cat, it's not a dog. That all is possible. But when the subject matter of the discussion is the self, these are all useless. These methodologies, these means, these discussions, these philosophical approaches, they become superfluous. We can only clarify ourselves. That is what we are trying to do. This philosophical discussion is, in fact, to deny the possibility of knowing the self through any philosophical discussion. It's only through Shruti and Anubhuti. It's through your own experience, Swakshatkara, and in the light of the insights which is available in the Upanishads, can we ever reach there? Instead of getting confused with the lower mind, the insufficient, limited mind we have. And the mind thinks it's very intelligent. We have read a few books, few philosophers' names and their thoughts and processes we are very obsessed with. And with this wisdom, now we presume we can know the self, we can argue. They are beautiful books, by the way. You can read about philosophy of mind, and so many books have been written about what is the self, sources of the self, Charles Taylor. They're great books to read. But they will tell you nothing absolutely about the self that we are talking about, the subject self, the pure consciousness, on which layers and layers of names and forms we put, and we become American, we become Indian, we become men and women and everything. These are superimpositions. Let's look at the commentary, which sort of makes it even. Uh, Yena sakshina idam jagat sarvam praninaha janate. Yena sakshina, by which that witness self, witness consciousness. Then whatever we see, janate tat chaitanya rupam atma vastuni yena kena sakshi bhutena janatam. Now that Chaitanya Rupa, what is the Swarupa of this Jnata? That Atma, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. So that is what is explained to us. How do you know? What is that? That is very critical here. Therefore, he's trying to say this here, that how do you know that? Idam Jagat Sarvam Praninha Janate Tat Chaitanya Rupam Atma Vastuni. Yeah, Atmavastuni, Atmavastu Anyena Kena Sakshibhutena Janatam. There is this Atmavastu. And what is the Swarupa of this? It is Atma Swarupa, Chaitanya Swarupa. It's pure consciousness. Then this is the witness self. And then you're talking about who is the witness of this witness? Who is the observer of this observer? Now, in modern physics, they say that, okay, reality is observer sensitive, observer dependent, because without an observer, how do you talk about reality? Any reality, somebody is talking about it. Now you are asking the question, who is the observer of the observer? It's a foolish question. Yeah, because the observer is that consciousness, and there is no higher, because if that becomes so, then there will be anavastha dosha, regression ad infinitum, because then there will be an observer, there's some other observer to observe this, and there'll be another observer, there'll be another observer. The moment you bring in a knowing self, you'll say, who knows this knowing self? There'll be no end to this discussion. Anyasya vidyamane anavastha dosha pattehe. If you agree that there is a higher self who declares or makes the existence of the self evident, substantiates the existence of Atma, if you agree there is a superior consciousness, there is something which is superior to Atma, there is another consciousness which says, yeah, there is a consciousness called Atma, then there will be requirement for another consciousness high to that to say that consciousness which knows this consciousness. Then there is anavastha dosha. Vigyataram sakshanam anyena kena sadhanena vidyad vijaniyat. Which is the witness? This witness makes everything else evident. Then you are thinking about a consciousness which is superior to the witness. No, that is the end point. That is the final point. That superior consciousness is supreme consciousness. It is not superior, and there is no further superiority attributable to any other consciousness. Nano manasa gya eva ityata aha. But there is this doubt. Manasa anudrashtabhyam. In Bhagavad Gita, many slokas say, how do you know Atma? With the help of your mind. When that word manasa is written there, it is not talking about mind as a tool for knowing the self. No. They are saying that only by dissociating yourself from all sense objects outside and returning to your inner consciousness, and through nididhyasana, shravana, manana, and nididhyasana, in the inner core of your consciousness, where you are able to dissociate yourself from all the vishayas, all the external objects, can you return to that pure consciousness within? Then there will be no further entanglements. There'll be no further, like, for example, you're thinking about A, B, C, D, right? These are object specific thoughts, object specific modifications of the consciousness. These are vikaras of the consciousness. You're thinking about a house, you're thinking about your car, you're thinking about your research paper, you're thinking about moksha, you are thinking about different subject matters. When you withdraw from all these external points of attraction, return to the source, which is the pure consciousness. Manasaiva anudrashtabhyam. In that sense, it's written. It's not that you're using your mind as a tool to know the self. However, the student has this problem. He said, but sir, I've read it somewhere. Manasa eva jnaya. The Atma can be known with the help of your mind, with the manas. He's saying, therefore, he's saying, yes, it's so possible. If it's a Vedya Vastu, Vedyetu Jnaya Vastuni Vishaye Sadhanam Antagaranam Saktam Samartham. When you have Vedya Vastu, that means it's an external object. Yeah, you can know about it. You can use your mind. You can think about it. That is non self. That is anatma. Other than that pure consciousness, everything is anatma. Anatma, atma, viveka, that is what we are doing in Vedanta. Everything other than the pure self, which is nameless, formless. That is how we return to that point and we say Aham Brahmasmi. So he said, being sadhanam antagaranam saktam samartham. That manasa, that word you are raising with the help of your mind, that antagaranam manabuddhi chitta ahankara, you are going to use your mind to reflect on. If you say Vedya Vastu, Vedya means Vishayatvena Jnaya. You can know it as an object of your knowledge. Natu avishaye bettari. The Atma or the Vetta, the knower, is not Vishaya, it's Vishayi. It's not an object of knowledge, it is the knower itself. You cannot use a tool which is much inferior, which is Anatma, to know the Atma. Yeah, you can use the mind to do discussion. That's what we are doing right now. In order to get rid of all possible alternatives which tempt us to believe we can know the Atma like we know a dog or a cat. When we are able to discard all these possibilities, we are returning to the pure self. Then only we are established in the self in the right sense of the term. Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha iti shrutehe. He's saying Toitri Upanishad in the second chapter, in the fourth sloka, it says, Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha. The mind goes there. You're using, say, you're talking about something. Whenever you're talking about something, it's external to the consciousness. You cannot. Brahman is avachya. There is no language with which you can actually talk about the Atman, that Chaitanya. You can talk about everything else. But words cannot bind it. With no words, it's too imperfect, too restricted, too limited to be able to express what is the Swarupa Bhuta Atman. And it goes and bounces back. Aprapya manasasaha. Even if you go, you will not use your mind to capture the essence of the self, because they are lower levels of manifestation of the same self. These are all adhyasita. superimposed. The same Atma appears as mind, same Atma appears as body, same Atma appears as your rational self, your emotional self. They are lower order of realities. The highest order of reality is where there is no order, there is no name, and there is no form. Therefore, he's saying, Manaso no sakshi vishayaha. The mind cannot objectify the sakshi, which is the witness of everything else. The mind, the self watches the mind. That's how sometimes we say, मेरा मन ठीक नहीं है, my mind is not right, please don't disturb me, I was absent minded. Don't we say that? So the mind is an object of our knowledge. The mind cannot know, it's a jada vastu. That is why we have very clearly discussed in Bhagavad Gita, these are all kshetra, the knower. This is the superior thing. These are all at that level. Okay. Yataha tasya bhasa manopi swavisham vittiti bhavaha. So, in the light of that self, with the help of the light of that self, like a boy uses a small mirror to reflect light of the sun on one of his friends in a classroom from outside the classroom for fun. He's using the sunlight. The mirror is not the source of the light. The source of all our knowledge is that Atma, Swayam Prakasha, Atma Tattva. With the light of the self, the mind is able to see everything. That is why it's called Chidabhasha, Chidvad Abhasate. It appears as if it has its own light. It doesn't have its own light. It is reflecting the light of the self. Therefore, he's saying, Manopi Swavishayam Betti iti Bhavaha. The mind also knows its subjects, whether it's a cat or a dog or a house or a car, or you're thinking about anything right now. A lot of dirty things are going on in the world, some conflict, some war. So the best thing is not to watch television, not to watch YouTube, no news. The best thing is to keep quiet because they are not relevant. And by thinking about it, you're not going to help. And just you can pray for the people who are being affected, the poor mothers and children and all kinds. It's a humanitarian crisis, and we can just pray. But the mind, kind of gets entangled in all these realities. And mind thinks it can know all this, and it knows all this with the light of the self. It cannot see its own source. It's seeing the world with the source light of the self. Okay? Sa vetti vedyam na tasyasti vetta. Sa vetti vedyam. That is the Svetasvatara Upanishad. Sa, that Atma Tattva, vetti vedyam na tasyasti vetta. It knows everything. But there is nothing which is a knower of the knower. There is no one who can know the self. So then how do we get Atma Jnana? That question you will ask, right? If nobody can know the Atma Tattva, then how do you talk about Atma Jnana? Yeah, that is Atma Sakshatkara, not Vishayatvena. Atma Jnana is not like physics or chemistry or geology or architecture. No. It's not a subject matter to know. When you discard all such knowledge and return to the source consciousness, that luminosity which glows in you, that becomes so powerfully evident in you. You do not even have words to describe it. You just dance around happy that finally I've reached there. And that moment of epiphany, that truth which dawns on you, it takes years of sadhana. And then I tell you, when we have these moments, and I'm slight digression, but I'm just allowing myself this digression. You know, in your life, why do we travel? Why do we go to Tirtha and this and that? You take a break sometimes, or there is a farewell party and you're retired and you're coming. You will have these moments, interludes of silence, interludes which might be interpreted as loneliness, interpreted as moments of solitude, moments of mild emotional discomfort. But these are powerful moments. Why? These are the moments when you are in fact disconnected from all kinds of entanglements. Yeah. And when this moment arrives, that is the best moment, in fact, to return to the self. These are the best moments you value. You remember these moments because these are the moments where it's like the clutter is removed from your mind. Mind is free. Mind is relatively free. It's very light. And through this Vedantic meditation, when we look at everything and you reject everything, we are so heavy with thoughts all the time. Morning to night, we are heavy with thoughts, all kinds of thoughts. And then we have now social media, you have this dumb scrolling, uh, garbage and more garbage and more garbage. And it's just, it's just putting in a lot of, if you watch on YouTube, how the horses are taken care. I watched a couple of videos. I'm just digressing a little because we'll come back to the point. These horses, their hoofs get injured. There is some overgrowth and stuff like that. So in the West, in Europe and other places, there are these guys who take care of the horses. So they have to cure them. They'll cut it off. Yeah. And they will again put those iron pads and repair the hoofs and I was just curious, what about these wild horses? Who takes care of them? He said, I mean, I did some online research, and the answer is that no, but they walk around a lot in the forests and on rocky fields. And so the hoofs, through wear and tear, remain healthy because the teeth of rats, they grow a few centimeters, yeah, every month. So they have to bite everything and they have to sort of keep those teeth in shape. Similarly, the horses, their hoofs grow about a centimeter in a month or something. I'm not very sure about this data, but they keep growing and they get injured because they are not doing enough exercise. Yeah. What we are doing with our minds, with our consciousness, is like the domesticated horse's hooves, which get injured because there's too much of garbage and lots of stuff on which we walk, which doesn't do not help us. They do not help us remain mentally healthy. What Vedanta teaches us is that we need to draw a line between what is relevant to our consciousness for regaining our inner purity. And that is the Vedantic sadhana. Much of it is just useless garbage and they have no relevance. There's no end to how much garbage can you entertain, can you encourage yourself to, get trapped in. The mind jumps around and it's restless, and you do a lot of things. You do no real creative work. At least if you're writing a paper, you're reading a book, the mind is at least substantively getting into a deeper level of consciousness. But much of the time, we're just at a very surface level. And this is exactly the opposite of what Vedanta is asking us to do. It's saying that your real nature doesn't lie, it doesn't become evident, it doesn't flourish. If you keep on covering it up, you are wrapping it up with layers and layers of false consciousness, layers and layers of false entanglements, which have no relevance whatsoever. And you think these are very meaningful. They are not meaningful at all. Therefore, he's saying, Sabitti Vedyam na tasyasti Veta. That knower doesn't have another superior knower. The same point is being reiterated. Vedanta hammers that truth into our minds, into our consciousness again and again through so many Upanishadic insights because our minds are often very confused. Na tasyasti Veta. Anyad eva tad viditat atho aviditat adhi in Keno Upanishad. What is that Atma? It's beautifully explained. That Atma is different from Tad Viditat, that which you know. How? Vishayatvena. You know the earth, physics, chemistry, everything else other than the self. That is Vidita, the domain of knowledge, where there is a subject object dichotomy. That domain is called Vidita, that which you know. Then aviditat. What is aviditat? That which is covered with ignorance means you do not know. So physics Till we had a lot of these interesting theories that we came, did we know anything called nucleus? How the neutron and proton, and how can they stay together? Because protons are all positive, positively charged, and neutrally charged is neutron, and how they can form the nucleus, how can they be together? And then after a lot of research, then we're talking about mechanization. Yeah. So there is this half spin is happening. It doesn't have any matter in it. No, it's only charged particle. It's sometimes is plus, sometimes is minus. So this whole complex theory that built to explain how the nucleus can hold together. Till we know what it is, it's covered with ignorance. There are a lot of things about which we do not know. They are covered with ignorance. That is avidita. The domain which we do not know, that domain of reality which we do not know is what? Avidita, not known. So you have known the domain of the known, vidita, the domain of the unknown, avidita. But remember, in both these domains, there is one thing which is common: subject object dichotomy. You have the subject, these are the things I know, vidita. These are the things I don't know, avidita. The Atma Tattva is neither in this domain nor in that domain. It's neither Vidita nor Avidita. If it is Avidita, it can be Vedita. If it is unknown, it can be known through more research. Atma doesn't belong there. If it's known, then it's Vishayatvena known. It's known as an object of knowledge, means there is subject object dichotomy. Advaita Vedanta says there is no dichotomy, there is one universal consciousness. And this whole dichotomy that we are talking about, knowledge and known and knower and all that, is just delusional. It just presumptuous, not real. Therefore, he's saying that knowledge, which we refer to as Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, it is not Vishaya Jnana. That Jnana here is actually Bodha Swarupa. It is consciousness without any thoughts. It's consciousness without any subject object dichotomy. That is being now driven home. स वेत्ति वेद्यं तत्सर्वं नान्यतस्याति वेदिता विदिता विदिताभ्यां तत् पृथक् बोध स्वरूपकम्. Beautifully it's explained. स वेत्ति वेद्यम, yat yat vedyam, whatever is knowable, whatever can be an object of knowledge, sa vetti, that Atma knows. How does that Atma know? Does it have eyes? Does it have ears? Does it have fingers to touch? No. How does it know? Yeah, all these instruments are used. You have the Annamaya Kosha and Pranamaya Kosha and Manomaya Kosha and Vijnanamaya Kosha, and you have Anandamaya Kosha. All they are active and are able to have any results because they are guided by, supported by that consciousness. Without that consciousness, they cannot do anything. A person may have a beautiful face, you have lovely nose and lovely eyes and lovely ears, he's dead. Is he able to see anything? He's in deep sleep. Is he able to see anything? No, it's the consciousness. The mother of all possible knowledge is that pure consciousness. Therefore, he's saying, Sa Betti Yat Yat Vedyam. Whatever is knowable, that Atma knows. That means in the light of that consciousness, every other forms of knowledge can be possible. Tatsarvam. Na anyaha tasya asti vedita. But don't ever have this delusion that there is another Vedita, that means there is another Vetta, a knower, which is different from this Vetta, which is different from this Atma. Atma is self-aware. Atma is showing Jyoti, he is showing Prakasha. There is no other light which lights up this light of consciousness. Sorry for repeating these words because there is no other alternative. Every reality you see on earth is lit up by sun. Who lights up the sun? Ask yourself this question and meditate on it. And you will be able to realize what Vedanta is trying to drive home here. With the light of this consciousness, everything else become evident. But this consciousness is not lit up by any other light. Ishwayam Prakasha. I hope that is clear. In the sense, if you enter into a dark room with a torchlight, you are seeing the table, the books, the almirah, the bed, and everything. And there is a lamp in a corner. It's covered with a handkerchief or a napkin. You remove the napkin. That particular lamp declares itself. You don't have to put light on that lamp. The lamp is self evident. Similarly, this Atma Tattva, this Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, doesn't need the help of any other light to be lit up. It's Swayam Prakasha. Therefore, he's saying, Na tasyasti vedita. Then he's explaining that Ken Upanishad thing. Viditat atha aviditat adhi. That Atma is different from both Vidita and Avidita. Vidita avidita bhyam. Panchami here. So Vidita and Avidita, from them. Tat, what is that Atma? Prithaga is neither in the domain of the known, nor it's there in the domain of the unknown. What is covered by darkness, Atma is not that. Because Atma can never be covered by darkness. It's our consciousness. We have layers and layers of imperfections in the way we are thinking about it. When we remove these faulty conceptions of the self, the real self just becomes evident. So it's not unknown, like you don't know that there is a cow which gives a lot of milk. It got a reward in a farmer's festival or a farmer's exhibition. They had got all their livestock. You don't know about that cow. Somebody goes and he says, do you know there's this cow in northern India, and she was brought here and she can give about 35 liters of milk a day. You don't know. That is avidita. You know, that you have a pet dog who is very loyal to you. That is vidita. The Atma is neither of these. That is Bodha Swarupa. It is different from these. What is it? Bodha Swarupakam. That light of consciousness. It is jnana in what sense? Not jnana of something, but it is Bodha Swarupa. It's awareness without thoughts. It's awareness without any object. It's awareness without any externality. There is nothing internal or external to the consciousness. They have so many ways in which they are trying to drive home this point. Let's look at the commentary if they are trying to sort of tell us a little more. Sa Sakshi yad vedyam gyam asti tatsarvam vetti. That Sakshi Chaitanya knows everything, whatever is knowable is there to be known, it knows that. Tasya Sakhinaha anya vedita jnata nasti. That Atma Chaitanya, which is the witness of this whole universe, there is nothing else which is a witness to it. What is it? Bodha Surupakam, Jnanatmakam Param Brahma. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. It's Jnanatmakam. That itself is Param Brahma. And then, so how is it not Vidita and Avidita is explaining? Vidita, Vidita Viditam, Jnana Vishayam, Jagatadikam. What is Vidita? Jnana Vishayam. Whatever is the object of your knowledge, whatever is the object of the process of knowing, I know X. What is that X? What is different from you? I know X. X can be anything. That is Vidita. I do not know Y, or I don't know X dash. That X dash or Y is unknown. So whatever is known and whatever is unknown, but different from you, that is Vidita and Avidita. Vidita Vidita Bhyam Viditam Jnana Vishayam Jagatadikam. Jagat. Jagat is external reality. Adi he adds because there are internal things also, like your mind, your veins, your indriyas, and everything. And then he's saying Aviditam Ajnanena Savalitam, which is covered by ignorance. You do not know. Brahmatmakam, or you don't know. Tabhyam Prithak Vilakshanam is different from that domain of ignorance and domain of knowledge where there is a subject-object dichotomy. Sabodha Vishayad Virnaha. That bodha is different from bodha Vishaya. Bodha Vishaya is everything internal and external to you. The Bodha cannot be known by any other process of knowing. It is self evident. Yeah. Now, there is another tika in my hand, and if there is anything interesting here, I'll just look at it. Yeah, it's same. There is nothing. Now, there is an introduction to the next verse here, and I'll just touch upon it. Now, he's saying, Nanu, vidita vidita atirikta bodha na anubhyate. I am a little confused, sir. You are saying the Atma is different from what is vidita, what is known, and what is avidita, what is not known. Is neither known nor unknown, Vishayatvena, as an object of knowledge. But Bodha Swarupa, how do I know it exists? No Anuviyate, I have not experienced anything called. What is the self? It's Jnana Swarupa. Oh, really? And what is it? Is it my mind? No, it's not in your mind. How do I know it? No, the very fact that you are talking about it, you know. I'm a little confused, sir. Why so? Because I'm not being able to have any evidence about that Bodha Swarupa. What is that? You see, there is a beautiful example which always say, they say, do you know anything about attention without knowing anything that you are attending to? He is very attentive. Then immediately you add, he is very attentive in his studies. He is very attentive at home. She is very attentive while she's painting. We give this attention as an object. This Bodha Swarupa, it is attention without any object. Now, it's very difficult to know that attention without having something that it relates to. You can use the word he's very attentive, she's very attentive. But attention per se, how do you know it? That's why he's asking this question. He's saying, Vidita Vidita Tirikto Bodho na Anuviyate Ityasankhya Vidita Visheshanasya Vedanasya Eva Bodha Swarupatvad Tad Anubhava Abhave Vidita Viditasya Api Anubhava Abhava Prasangad Bodha Anubhavo Avasya Angikartabhya Iti Sopahasam Aha. Now, the introduction itself is a substantial argument. He's saying, look here, my boy, if you are trying to have some doubts about what is that Bodha Swarupa, which is different from what is known and what is not known, there is something called Bodha Swarupa. What is it? He's trying to let me tell you this. You are able to even raise this question, what is that Atma Bodha Swarupa? Do you know how you are being able to raise this question? Because with the help of that bodha, you are being able to think, you are able to question. So with that only you know what is known and what is unknown. If you don't accept the reality of that bodha, that awareness, it's awareness without thoughts, it's awareness, attention without thoughts, attention without an object. The very fact that you are being able to speak, you are being able to discuss anything, that itself is the proof that that Bodhu Swarupa is there. And he's kind of mocking here. If you look at the Kalyana Piyusha, Ukta Ritya Bibideshu Api Vyavahareshu Ghatapatadaya Yena Vyavaharta Anubhuyante Tad Vyavahartuhu Tad Bodha Swarupatmatve Siddhepi Swatmanamapi Bodha Swarupam Yona Vetti Tam Upalavate Slokadvayena. Now here it's a little interesting. The verse number 29 and 19 and 20, they are in fact making a mockery of the guy who is doubting the existence of the self. Yeah. And it's a very interesting argument. He's saying, look, you know a house. Right now, we are discussing Panchadashi. So you're looking at your laptop or you're looking at your phone. Yeah. So this is the Vidita Varga. You are knowing about it. Whatever you know because there is this Bodha Swarupa, because there is this consciousness. That you don't know about that consciousness you are raising, you're just being foolish. How do you know everything if there is no Bodha? If there is no consciousness, how do you know anything? He's asking. So if you ask this question, he's making fun of you in the next two verses. बोधप्यनुभवो यस्य न कथं च न जायते तत्कथं बोधये शास्त्रं लोष्टं नरसमाकृतम्. He's saying, look, I cannot explain to you. I mean, that can happen to any teacher of Vedanta. So the teacher is getting a little fatigued here, it seems. What is the fatigue? Why is he feeling a little bored? Because the child is asking the mother. It's a trick that all of us have played with our little siblings or children. When children ask you a lot of questions, what happens? Then you will say, okay, then why that happens? I see. Then why that happens? And finally, what do you say? When you grow up, you will understand. Right now, it's not for you. That's the only way to silence him. But when the child says, how do you know that you know? If the child asks, like the Vedanta student here who is a little confused and is asking his teacher, how do I know that I know? How do I know that I know? The teacher is saying, Bodha api anubhavo yasya na kathanchana jayate. This fellow is sitting and talking to me. He's a conscious being. He has consciousness. He's definitely having awareness. How does he talk to me? He's having fun. He's having an argument with me. However, that he has this consciousness, that wisdom is not appearing in him. It's not manifesting in him. How do I explain the insights of the Vedanta? Tam katham bodhayat sastram. How do I explain to this? He's an idiot. Lostam nara samakritim. He's like a clay doll in the form of a human being. Why the word clay doll? Clay doll doesn't have consciousness. You have, uh, there is this word in literature, in both in Bengali, also in Oriya. They have this Gobar Ganesh. If you make an idol out of cow dung, it's not fit for worship. Hmm? But a clay doll is more appropriate in case of Vedanta. The Vedanta is trying to compare a person who is unable to accept his own consciousness with a clay doll. The clay doll doesn't have any consciousness. It looks, maybe it has a human form, but it's made of clay. It doesn't have any life. It doesn't have a mind, doesn't have any consciousness. Now, if a person is not able to understand this basic foundational truth that he is conscious, that there is consciousness, that Bodha Swarupa, then he is more like a clay doll. How do I explain the insights of Upanishads? That pure consciousness is different from what is Vidita and what is Avidita, what is known and what is unknown. That means essentially neither Atma is unknown nor it is known. Oh, really? What is it? No, it's Bodha Swarupa. Is an object of knowledge, is an object of ignorance, Vishaya, of Ajnana, or no, it's not Vishaya of anything. It is that Atma Swarupa. It is saying, Bodha api Sakshitvena. So, what is saying Sakshitvena, Vishayani, Atmani, Aparokshena, Vidyamanepi. Now, that Sakshi, that is the Vishay, Vishayin, the one who knows, that Sakshi Chaitanya. And how do you know? Aparoksha Anubhuti happens there. Direct Sakshatkara. Why the word Aparoksha Anubhuti? Paroksha Anubhuti is when you hear something. We have a lot of theories, We study. We may not have seen the moon, but we know about theories about the moon, and we know what the moon is like. We haven't been there. That is paroksha jnana. And then you have pratyaksha jnana when you see through your sense organs. When you know without seeing through your sense organs and without going beyond what you have heard, that is aporoksha. That means direct perception, not through your senses. That is why the word aporoksha used. Pratyaksha, atma pratyaksha, but we say aporoksha because this pratyaksha, atma pratyaksha, is different from what we see with the help of our senses. Because the atma cannot be seen with your eyes, you cannot hear the atma with your ears, you can't touch it with your fingers. Therefore, he's saying, Vishayani Atmani Aparokshena Vidyamanepi is always there in you. Because of that, you know anything else. Yasya Anubhava Sakhyatkarha Kathanchana Na Kathamapi Na Jayate. However, it's always there with you, but you are not able to admit the presence of that consciousness. No Udeti. Na Jayate means not born. That means no Udeti. It doesn't happen in him. Tang Nara Samakritim नरेण समा बाह्य आकृतिर्यस्य सह नरत्वेन बाह्य विषयाणाम बाह्य व्यवह्रियमाणमपि लोष्टम तद्वत् जडम. Now, the person is being referred to as a human being, but he is not being able to accept the reality of his consciousness. So he's as good as a clay doll, is as good as jada, as good as unconscious. Kuntida buddhim. Why is jada? No, he's talking. He's kuntida buddhi. He is not being able to allow his wisdom, his intellect, to grow to that level to accept it. He's not being able to see the point, as they say. He's refusing to see the truth. Sastram katham bodhayet. So, now bodhayet. You will never be able to explain to him. As they say, if a person is willingly asleep, he's in his sense, but is acting as if he's asleep, you can't wake him up. Similarly, a person who is not being able to accept the reality of his consciousness is as good as a clay pot. You cannot explain Shastra to it. Then he's trying to point another interesting point that this is self contradictory. Yeah, it's called self affirmative contradiction in Western philosophy. You say something which contradicts your own arguments, your own argument. Whatever you say will actually contradict what you are trying to say, what you are trying to defend. So you are contradicting yourself. That is being explained in the next verse. Very beautiful. He's trying to say, why is that person comparable with Jada or inanimate or unconscious, or you're comparing him with a clay doll? Why do you say that? He's trying to explain in this. Juha mesti navetyuktir lajjayai kevalam yatha na buddhyate maya bodhaha bodhabhya iti tadrishi. He's saying, do you know actually what you're trying to do? The Acharya is trying to mock the student. How is he trying to mock the student? He's trying to say, Juha me asti nava. You see, I'm not very sure whether I have a tongue or not while you are speaking. Juha me nasti, if you say, you have a tongue, then you are trying to challenge it. How do you know I have a tongue? You see, you are speaking, right? People will mock at you. So somebody says, you have a tongue. You don't want to. So there's this beautiful small some clips now, humorous ones, which are there all over in the social media. So there is this argument between a husband and a wife, the classic case of couples arguments at home. Now, whatever the husband says, the wife has a tendency to disagree with him. So whatever he says, she will disagree. Okay. Now the husband becomes a little intelligent, and the husband says, "If you disagree with me, and I agree with you, what do? The moment she says, I agree, she fails in her argument. That she has a right to disagree and she will always disagree with you because with this statement, she cannot disagree. You say, if you disagree with me and I agree with your disagreement, what would you say? The wife keeps quiet because if she says, no, I don't agree, Then that what do you mean by I don't agree? Because he is only agreeing with your disagreement. He says, no, no, I agree with you. You say that means he has violated her first principle that she will always disagree with her husband. Why am I mentioning this? Here, if you say, I don't have a tongue, somebody says, you have a tongue. No, how do you know I have a tongue? I don't have it. Really? How do you speak? This is just making mockery of yourself. Lajjai kevalam yatha. This is only to bring yourself a bit of embarrassment because you're contradicting yourself by saying, I don't have a tongue. Now, this is the drishtanta. What is the drashtantika? We are coming to the Vedantic point. What is the prakrita? The Vishayavastu here, Atma. And what are we discussing? Na buddhyate maya bodha. I cannot know that awareness that I am, that bodha swarupa Atma. I don't understand what it is. The moment you say, I don't understand, that act of I don't understand is in fact lit up with the help of that bodha swarupa, with the help of that consciousness. Bodha bodhabhya iti tadrishi. Mayana buddhyate bodha. This bodha thing is not known by me. Oh my God. Already you have proved my point. How? Because you say you don't understand it. So there is this consciousness with which you're being able to say this. Yeah. So that is how he's trying to prove this point. Yatha me juha asti nava. Whether I have a tongue or not. Kantataha ukti sambhasanam bhaktuhu kevalam lajjai. The person who says this is only inviting embarrassment. Kalpate. Juham bina tad uktehe asambhavat. You don't have the tongue. How do you have that statement to be made? How can you make that statement? I don't have a tongue. Only when you have tongue, you can make the statement, I don't have a tongue. The presence of the tongue is proved. Tatha eva maya bodha jnana swarupa atma na buddhyate na jnayate. Similarly, if you say, I don't know what is that atma swarupa jnata, I don't know. The moment you say, I don't know, you're already proving the existence of that bodha swarupa, that consciousness in you. Kintwataha param bodha evaiti bachanam tadrashi tatha lajjakari. It only will bring you embarrassment because you are not understanding that fundamental point. Na maya buddhyate iti bodha anubhavasya apalopitum asakyatvat. Because maya na buddhyate, the moment you say it's not understood by me, you are presupposing consciousness in you and you are just going round and round. So we have just hit the timeline, so we'll stop here. It's a good, the verse number 20th, and we'll resume it tomorrow. Till then, we'll see you again. Let's do the Santi Mantras. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Sri Guru Namaha Om Tatsat. So have a big weekend and we'll meet again tomorrow.
Pranam, sir.